Could I have picked a more boring background and or outfit? Find out in the next episode. Today we're going to be talking about Dave Hollis, the man best known as the guy who used to work at Disney and Rachel Hollis's ex-husband. So I have to admit that at the beginning of this video, before I did all the research and watched hours of Dave Hollis talking on podcasts and giving speeches, I had one opinion of him. And then at the end of this video, I had another opinion about him. And neither one are very good, but it did change. I also think it makes a lot of sense to break this down into sections because Dave Hollis has a lot of different things going on in his life. And I think it's important to start at the beginning and work our way forward to truly understand the essence of this man. So,
let's go!
So Dave grew up in Southern California. His parents are named Patty and Dave Sr., and Dave Sr. fought in the Vietnam War. He also owned a construction company, from what I can tell is still around to this day, and his mom was a stay-at-home mom. Also, Patty and Dave Sr. have been married for 48 years. Wow, that's quite the accomplishment. I mean, 50 years almost, that's pretty insane. Dave is one of 4 children. His brother, Tim Hollis, has been the CEO of several companies, it appears, according to LinkedIn, and is currently the CEO of a data storage company in California. Andy Hollis is the managing director of a music management / celebrity promotions group and manages the artist Fable, seen here. Dave also has a sister named Heather, who is allegedly a teacher and mom in California. In high school, Dave was the valedictorian of his class, but didn't walk at graduation because he got into trouble.
When I was coming out of high school, I was teed up to be the valedictorian speaker for the last day of school. Put on your cap, put on your gown, let's go celebrate getting out of high school. Dave Hollis is going to lead you through the valedictorian speech. And then I did some stupid stuff on the last day of school that I get into in this book, and guess what? I didn't get to walk.
So I guess now run to Amazon and order Dave's book, Get Out of Your Own Way, to find out what shenanigans doesn't make Dave a bad guy. So it appears that all the Hollises were into going to church. I'm not sure which denomination, but obviously some form of Christianity.
Interestingly, I grew up inside of a faith community that put some taboo around listening to teachers that, if not holding a Bible, could sometimes be seen as sacrilegious.
And the only adversity I could find that Dave seemed to deal with, and I swear I'm not making this up, was that he was too tall to run.
I came into the idea of pushing myself physically with some limiting beliefs around what was possible for someone with my frame. That I'm too tall to run was a story that had been told to me for years and years of my life. I didn't run a single mile until I was 36 years old.
Whoa.
One single mile.
Everyone knows that tall people can't run. After graduation, he went to Pepperdine University and then got hired at 20th Century Fox as a research coordinator. He worked there for a year, then moved on to be a publicity. He moved on to be a publicity coordinator at Fox Broadcasting for 2 years, then was a junior publicist where it sounded like he got to work with some cool clients. He only worked there 1 year, then moved on to Merv Griffin Productions as an account exec. And this is where he worked with Destiny's Child. It seems like he didn't stay at these jobs very long, and it's kind of unclear as to why. It's really interesting that, 1 year, 2 year, 1 year, 1 year, as such a young person. I mean, he's only in his early 20s at this point. It's a little interesting. So finally, he starts working at Disney, and I believe he would have been around 27 at this point, having already worked at 4 other companies. After working for Disney for several years, he eventually lands that big gig, the one that he talks about incessantly everywhere you go. If he's introducing himself, he is introducing himself as the former president of theatrical distribution of the Walt Disney Studios. And I feel like this position, after hearing more about it, is the equivalent of being a firefighter holding the hose while a house is on fire. I mean, you really don't have to do much convincing that people want the product that you're selling.
So I came into this last job of my 17 years at Disney, which was the head of sales for the studio. I'm putting these movies in. When I first got the job, Disney had just acquired Pixar. So now it's Disney and Pixar. But 2 years later, Marvel Studios comes into the mix. 2 years after that, here comes Lucasfilm. And now the responsibility I have, though it comes with the trappings of the title and the access and the Academy and anything else, selling Avengers and Star Wars to movie theaters, it turns out, wasn't necessarily the hardest thing because of the quality of the team that was surrounding me, the strength of the intellectual property. And so I'm getting straight A grades, but I'm not studying for a single test.
So that gives you the idea of the career path that Dave Hollis took. I do admire that Dave seemed to take a traditional work path, put in the 9 to 5 hours, had a pretty regular, secure job, made money for his family. So I will give a big point to Dave for not just jumping ship and following in these other guru footsteps, at least in his early life. So at this point, when Dave got this big job, that's when he says he got bored. And to be fair, it probably is boring. Working at a place like Disney, probably, and I don't know this for sure, but it most likely has so many bureaucratic obstacles and mandatory meetings that could be emails and forced paperwork. He's not the creative where he's going and writing Toy Story. He's just an account person and has meetings and writes up proposals and stuff. It's probably not exciting, to be honest. And let me infuse a little analysis into this part. To me, it feels like he's saying, yeah, I was successful, but I'm still unhappy. And that must mean that I'm inherently better and meant for even bigger things than what I've accomplished so far. As opposed to, oh wait, I've gotten all this way in my life and it still doesn't matter. Like, that's the thing that drives me nuts with all these self-help people, is that it's not that they were wrong in the sense of they put too much emphasis on landing that job, making so much money, buying that Hummer. It's not that they were wrong about wanting all those things. No, they're just meant for more than what they already have. So he worked in that big president position until he decided to leave and become the CEO of the Hollis Co., which was Rachel's company. And for anyone who's surprised that he became the CEO, here's where Rachel explains why.
What's interesting is that in order for us to make this decision, I had to step down as CEO, which was very hard for my ego. Very
So he's
hard.
the CEO.
He's the CEO.
Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it.
He wouldn't have done it. And that was a conversation that we had. He was like, babe, if another company, and this was over many conversations, he was like, if another company tapped me right now to come and I would be tapped to be CEO
of some other startup.
So yeah,
or this.
and it's good that he did, because I would have continued to try and run it and
do all of it.
And the whole reason he's here is because I was struggling to do both. Like, I can't run the company and be the face of the company simultaneously.
I'm not sure how I feel about this. Let me know if you think Dave becoming CEO was fair or a little weird. I don't know if I would be cool with my husband coming into my company and saying like, okay, now I'm gonna be your boss. But also, I mean, like she said, did she really even want the job? I mean, her specialty is not doing accounting, all those types of things that he's good at. So I don't know. What do you think? So like I mentioned before, Dave met Rachel when she was 19 and he was 27. They got married about 2 years later, and she apparently hated her wedding, even though she was a party planner and that was her specialty. As you can see in this article, which if you would like to read it, it is cringeworthy for sure. I'll leave it in the description below. So Rachel and Dave had 3 biological children, and they adopted a baby girl, and then they announced their divorce in June of 2020, to everyone's surprise and dismay. Now, according to Dave, Rachel was the one that proposed the divorce, and Rachel didn't quite address it. So it's unclear, there's been no official statement, I guess, of who decided what and why, but it looks like Dave was the one who was shocked to find out that Rachel was done. Who knows what really happens behind closed doors, but that's what he made it appear to be, at least in the public eye. And it says in the post that they had been struggling for years to make their marriage work. all while holding these relationship conferences and hosting a podcast and giving out relationship advice like this.
Commit to having great sex.
Yep.
It's a thing that you choose.
Yep, 100%.
And if you are not someone who has that, it will have an impact on your relationship.
In my opinion, from watching a lot of the clips of both of them, and I never usually give this type of opinion, for the record, like this is a very rare opinion from Kia's world, but I think Rachel may have been too hard on Dave. I know, I never say that. Listen to this clip where she describes Dave's life. Now this is her husband, who she calls her biggest cheerleader, who supports her no matter what, and this is how she describes him.
There is a part of me that's like, he skipped the line.
He didn't go through adversity.
Yes, he like skipped the line.
challenges.
And I'm like, that's not fair. I mean, that sounds so, oh my gosh, like that's so ego and terrible, but that's the truth. That's been the hardest part to navigate for me is like, we started doing a podcast together and immediately we started showing up in things and they'd be like, Rachel and Dave Hollis. And I was like, this is not a wedding invitation. I am Rachel Hollis. I've earned the right to my name by myself. Like Rachel Hollis and Dave Hollis. It's not Rachel, like don't lump me in. Like it was like as soon as we started working together, it became, I don't know, I sound terrible. This sounds terrible, but this honest truth, this is what I've struggled with.
So what the struggle was, you didn't want to feel lumped in with your husband?
So her opinion is that she thinks he's been handed everything in life, and in a lot of ways, I mean, she's right, he was. But she chose him to be her husband and the father of her children, so holding that against him for this long isn't quite fair, in my opinion. And also without his steady job and constant paychecks, which apparently were in the 7 figures, so at least $1 million a year, which is a lot of money for anybody, the average person, that's a lot. She got to take risks in her business and she didn't have to take a paycheck for a very long time. She was able to reinvest all the money that she was making into the business to help it grow. So that would not be possible for the average person that didn't have such a large safety net.
If she wanted to go into some space that required capital, don't worry, I'm here in case it doesn't get the kind of return that you're hoping for. And I'd given value to her loving me because of the security and the way that that ended up becoming a part of our relationship. And when it was gone, if she doesn't need me, will she still love me became a real thing, which sucks. Because what it actually says is she doesn't love me unless, or that it's a contingent kind of love, which isn't a love at all.
So he really is responsible for a lot of the success that she had. It's just true. Sorry to say, but that's true. So the Hollises go on a family vacation to Hawaii, and Rachel gives him the draft version of Girl Wash Your Face. And if you've read this book, you know it does not paint Dave in a very good light. And you know, I think that it shouldn't paint him in a good light, because if she's telling the truth, he did a lot of bad things to her. If she's writing a self-help book about her life, I think she should be honest. However, if I was in his position reading this, it would be pretty embarrassing.
She goes on to tell a story of Dave treating her like absolute crap for a whole year, being his booty call, and all the while she thinks that he's her boyfriend. Dave's friends call her the 19-year-old, and one day at a party, Rachel introduces Dave to someone as her boyfriend. Dave gets so annoyed at her that he says to her, and I quote, "You've never acted your age before, but last night it was like it was written on your shirt." And then they didn't speak for 2 weeks. He flirted with other women in front of her. He would go out with friends, get drunk, and not invite her, but he would call her afterwards after he'd got home for sex. She didn't believe in sex before marriage, but she eventually did it with him anyway, just to desperately keep a hold of him.
You know, even though he shouldn't have done all the things he did, the fact that someone, your wife, someone's very close to you, is outing you about your mistakes in your life to make money, yeah, it probably would make anyone upset.
On the flight, I was handed the near final Word doc version of my wife's new book, Girl Wash Your Face, getting my first glimpse into just how transparent and vulnerable Rachel had decided to be,
and in a vanity alarm bells kind of way, just how many of my deepest insecurities would be exposed and how much of this everything's great, trust me, veneer I'd worked so hard to maintain would be challenged by her work.
So they get back from Hawaii and Rachel and Dave have this big talk where Rachel gives him a pretty big ultimatum.
And after that vacation, I'm like, we gotta have this conversation. So we come home, literally that day, put the kids to bed, and I go in the bedroom, I'm like, I need to talk to you. And I need so badly for you to please try and hear it. Please don't be defensive. And it was about a 2-hour conversation, and he kept getting fired up, and then we'd have to like talk himself back down. But the gist was, I said, if I keep growing and you stay the same, 2 years from now, we're not going to be together. You can't have one person, one part of a relationship that's growing and changing and being the best version of himself, and someone else who's stagnant. It's not going to work, because one of us or both of us is going to start to resent each other. And then it's going to become something bigger than it is in this moment. So we had this really hard conversation, and he was devastated. He was devastated.
And here's what Dave said the conversation went like.
I had a troubling time with alcohol. And my wife, one of the best and worst things about her is the ability for her to be unbelievably direct. And we had a hard conversation about what the heck I'm actually doing. And so I've decided on that day, I am not going to have a drink for a year, because I committed to the discomfort as a thing that I needed for growth, and the responsibility that comes with this job, with my relationship to my wife, with what my kids deserve, is that I am sober enough to actually both experience the pain of all of this growing and the identity stuff and everything else, but also show up well for them.
And that most likely comes with her thinking that he should have nothing to complain about, and therefore his withdrawn behavior is unacceptable. But as everyone knows, people who have crazy success can have pain, anger, depression. I mean, it doesn't discriminate because you have $1 million a year. It doesn't. Everyone, I think at this point, knows that. And Dave already has a new girlfriend named Heidi, and she's really similar to Rachel in many ways, but more on that later. Before they got divorced, it seemed that Dave really thrived on having Rachel tell him he sucked.
I have, as an accountability partner and best friend, a woman who was wired unlike most of humanity, right? So she was like, okay, you can die in a ditch here at the bottom. I am gonna just keep climbing. And the idea that she might continue without me, super motivating.
And I think it's great to have a drill sergeant when you're in boot camp trying to join the Army. But when you're at home and you're trying to be a partner with somebody, I don't think anyone, no matter how strong mentally you are, no one really wants that constant pressure from your life partner to be better, to make more, to be more. I could not imagine me telling my boyfriend that, or my boyfriend telling me that I was not enough on a daily basis, sending me emails saying that I need to step it up. I mean, who do you think you are? Am I not good enough for you? That's what I would think. And I mean, every 90s movie, basically the theme of the movie was, if you didn't like me as a nerd, as a loser, you don't deserve me at my best. And in a lot of ways, that's true. I mean, people should want you to grow and improve on your own terms, not become the person that you wish they would be. That's only gonna end in heartbreak. Obviously, in this case, it's exactly what happened. Like I promised, I'm gonna talk about Heidi Powell a little bit here. What I will say is that she's really similar to Rachel, including the way they wear baseball caps. They both seem to be, like I said, Tony Robbins groupies and are mommy influencers. And it seems like things are moving really fast for Dave and Heidi. They're pretty fresh off their divorces, their own divorces, obviously. And they've been pretty public about their relationship. I mean, what could go wrong? There's about 8 children that are involved between the couple. So I'm a little surprised that they're moving at such a fast pace. But then again, your whole life is on social media, as these social self-help influencers are. They need content, whatever, I guess that's their jam. They gotta make money somehow, post the photos of the girlfriend. Also, Dave seems to like this pose when he's with Rachel. And this one with Heidi. What does it mean? Who knows? I'm also not going to spend too much time on this because I want to do a whole video about this phenomenon, about influencers who are also parents using their children as a way to make money. I think it's disgusting, not okay, not cool, totally a weird thing to do in my opinion. So I want to get into like the whole vlogging family problem that a lot of YouTubers have talked about, because it is so important that these kids are taken as human beings and not side characters in their parents' life. Hey guys, here's my 7 kids and they all have to sit here because I told them that, they're not gonna get Christmas presents if they don't sit here and make the vlog because we need to make money. I mean, that's what I imagine goes on in these houses when the record button's not on. And it's not cool in my opinion. Dave has a show with his daughter who happens to be adopted called Tea Time with Noah.
We're talking about health. Do you know what health is? What is health?
She's so adorable, but I still think it's wrong to use your children in any situation where money is involved. I mean, he posts it on YouTube. He obviously makes AdSense money on YouTube, and now he's even writing a children's book about the show and his tea time with Noah, and to me that's just gross. Just do tea time with your daughter without turning a camera on. Is that so hard to do? I don't understand why this is like normal and people accept it. Like, you're making money from a personal moment with your child. Why are you doing that? Anyways, I can't wait till a law passes that doesn't allow children to be exploited by their parents on YouTube anymore. I'm hoping that eventually that happens. We shall see. Dave adheres to the really out of touch mentality that you are the only thing holding you back, which of course is true for people who haven't really had to struggle through life. He'll say, write down what you're grateful for, while also never enjoying a moment without constant obsession about the next goal he's gonna crush. So a little hypocritical in my opinion. And this is similar to his ex-wife, so it's not just Dave, this is also kind of Rachel's problem too. And at the beginning of the video, I said I had one opinion about Dave Hollis, and that was that he was an arrogant jerk who just wanted everyone to bow down to him for being a successful executive. And I still think that's sort of true, but now I also think that he was going through a typical upper middle class midlife crisis about who he was and the life that he created, and he was met with a partner in Rachel who basically forced him to improve more or go away, which I think is extremely harsh. My final question to you and to myself and to the universe at large, is Dave the hero or the villain in Hollisville? To me, he's both. I think he tried to keep his family intact when Rachel told him to get better or get lost. And it does look like he tried. I mean, at least he played the part of a self-development student. I think he's braggadocious and unaware of his privilege, and he uses his children, specifically his adopted daughter, way too much for content. But can he learn from his mistakes and fix them? Yeah, of course. Everyone can. Even Rachel. Even you at home watching this. Everyone can have a redemption arc. I feel like a lot of people will be angry about me saying that, but that's my belief in my life, that if you believe people don't have second chances in them, then what's the point of trying at all? Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.